It was still dark when they brought the king to his knees. No drums, no crown, just breath. Rough, shallow, clouding in the cold air. The stone beneath him was wet. Silver cuffs burned around his wrists, hissed against skin. Every time he moved, the metal smoked. This was the end of Darius Stormveil, Alpha King of the Crescent Vale, feared by enemies, adored by a people who now watched him die from behind iron gates. The moon hung heavy over the fortress, a thin white coin that refused to fade. Even the dawn seemed afraid to show its face. He could smell blood, his own, and the copper tang of fear coming off the guards who stood too close. Funny thing, he wasn't angry. Not anymore. He was tired enough to stop pretending he didn't deserve this. A boot struck his shoulder. "Eyes up, Your Majesty," one guard muttered. He raised his head. Through the veil of rain, he saw the courtyard fill. Elders in long red cloaks, council wolves in polished armor. A crowd pressed tight behind the walls, faces pale, waiting for the story to end. They'd all come to see the fall of a king, but none of them knew the truth that sat inside his chest like a heartbeat with nowhere to go. He had asked for one thing before the blade. Not mercy, not a clean cut, just her. The woman he'd broken to keep the crown. The Omega he'd loved and rejected in the same breath. Rhea. He hadn't seen her since the day he read the rejection oath. 8 moons. 8 moons of silence and guilt. Now, this was his last wish, his last breath of her name. The cell door opened, the smell of rain turned sweet, wildflower and smoke, her scent. She stepped into the torchlight. No guards needed to announce her. Every wolf in the room felt the air change. Cloak soaked, hood low, one hand resting over the curve of her stomach. She looked nothing like the trembling girl he remembered. This woman carried storms behind her ribs. Darius tried to stand. The chains bit deeper. Rhea. Her name scraped out like gravel. She didn't answer. He forced a smile that didn't belong to him anymore. "They told me you wouldn't come." "They told me a lot of things," she said quietly. Her voice, God's, that voice, cut through the cell like light through fog. It was calm, but inside it lived every night she'd spent alone. "I needed to see you," he said. Before they kill you? No mercy, only truth." He nodded. A drop of water fell from the ceiling, hit the floor, echoed louder than any heartbeat. For a second, neither moved. Then she said, "You chose them over me." "I chose the kingdom." "Same thing." Her words hit harder than the chains. He flinched, and the guards shifted behind her, unsure if they should stop what they were seeing. Whatever this was. He lowered his head. "I thought rejecting you would keep you safe." "You thought wrong." Outside, the bell began to toll. Once, twice, execution time. The guards pulled him up. Rhea didn't move out of the way. Her eyes locked on his. She could have said goodbye, could have cursed him. Instead, she whispered, "Whatever happens next, remember this wasn't just your story." He frowned. "What do you mean?" But the guards dragged him through the door before she could answer. The courtyard was brighter now. Morning bled over the walls in thin gold streaks. The crowd went silent as the condemned king stepped into view. Chains clinked. Wolves shifted their weight, restless, smelling smoke and prophecy. Elder Thane raised the decree. "By the will of the council, Darius Stormveil is sentenced to death for treason against the Pax." The words rolled like thunder across stone. Darius lifted his head and looked at the horizon. The world looked too calm for a place about to spill blood. Then he found her again. Rhea, standing at the edge of the crowd, cloak pulled tight, wind tugging at her hair. The guards forced him to his knees. He wanted to look away, but he couldn't. Every heartbeat pulled his gaze back to her. Every breath ached for one more second to speak. "Rhea!" he shouted. The crowd stirred. The elder snapped. "Silence him!" But the sound of his name on her lips cut through the noise. "Darius!" Everyone froze. She pushed forward. Her hand rose, unsteady, trembling, and the baby under her ribs kicked hard enough to make her gasp. A faint shimmer spread across her cloak, silver, alive, like moonlight crawling over fabric. The executioner hesitated. "What is that?" No one answered. Rhea's breath hitched. Her eyes flicked to Darius, wide, afraid, understanding something she couldn't explain. He whispered, "The child." The elder barked, "Proceed!" The axe lifted, and that's when the wind died. The world went silent, too silent. No birds, no rustle, just heartbeat. 1, 2. The moonlight bent, fell straight onto Rhea's hands. The glow deepened, pulsed. Every wolf felt it, the hum inside their bones. The bond that should have been dead was alive, burning bright enough to taste in the air. Darius smiled through the blood on his lips. "I told them you were never ordinary." The axe dropped. A flash, light, sound. Everything swallowed at once. The crowd screamed, stone cracked, the bell shattered overhead. When the dust cleared, the platform was empty. Chains lay broken. The silver had melted black. And Rhea stood alone in the center of the courtyard, cloak whipping in the wind, eyes glowing like dawn had crawled inside them. No blade, no king, just silence. She whispered to no one, "You can't kill what the moon protects." That was the morning a kingdom learned fear. The day a rejected Omega stopped running, and the moment the prophecy took its first breath. If that made your heart skip, hit subscribe. Drop a howl in the comments, and tell me where you're watching from. Because this is only the beginning. The silence wasn't normal, not the kind that follows shock, not even the hush before a storm. This was deeper, older, like the world itself had gone still to listen. Rhea didn't move. She stood where the light had shattered, cloak torn, wind curling through the courtyard like it remembered her scent. The stone beneath her feet was cracked, blackened. The platform where they'd tried to kill Darius was empty, as if the king had never knelt there at all. Only the melted silver cuffs remained, still steaming. No body, no blood, just air that trembled like a heartbeat. Around her, wolves stared in stunned silence, eyes wide, hands frozen on hilts and scrolls. No one spoke. No one could. Something ancient had passed through this place, and it had left her standing in its center. Her fingers tingled, still warm, still glowing, faintly, like moonlight had crawled under her skin and decided to stay. She looked down at her stomach. The child was still, quiet, but she didn't need movement to feel it anymore. They were awake now, and so was she. Elder Thane was the first to speak. "Caesar." His voice cracked as he said it, like he didn't believe the order himself. But it was enough to wake the guards. Boots scraped stone, blades hissed from sheaths. Wolves surged toward her like the spell had finally broken. Rhea didn't wait to see how close they'd get. Her instincts screamed. Her legs moved. She turned and ran, down the old archway, past the silent crowd, through gates no one dared to block. Not one wolf reached for her. Not one hand stopped her. Because whatever power had saved the king, they could smell it clinging to her skin. They didn't understand it, but they feared it, and that was enough. She ran until her lungs burned, past the woods that knew her name, past the roots that remembered her weight. She ran until her cloak snagged on bramble and she didn't care. until the sounds of shouting faded behind trees and time, until the only thing left was breath and heartbeat. She dropped to her knees by the river, frozen water, thin ice cracking at the edges. Her reflection rippled in it, blurred and foreign. She didn't recognize her own face, not fully. Something had shifted. Not just power, not just fear, something deeper. The rejection mark on her wrist, the one the elders had carved when the king cast her aside, was glowing now. Faint silver, like it had been rewritten. Was that what this was? Not survival. Rewriting. She touched her belly again. The baby stirred. And in that instant, for the first time since he'd said her name, Rhea felt it. The bond. It had never snapped, just buried, pressed so far beneath pain and betrayal she'd stopped looking for it. But it was here, alive, thin as thread but unbreakable. She whispered his name. Darius. The wind didn't answer, but something in her chest did. Elsewhere, deep in the sacred woods behind the old temple ruins, a body hit the ground with a thud. Darius gasped like surfacing from drowning. Every nerve burned, every breath fought him. But he was alive. He blinked against a halo of light. A circle of ash surrounded him, and above, trees bent like they'd just exhaled his name. He didn't know how he got here. 1 second, the axe was falling. The next, her voice, her presence, and then light, everywhere. Swallowing the platform, the guards, the pain. Now, he was here, alive, alone, and marked. He rolled to his side, coughing. Then he felt it. A tug. Not on his skin, deeper, on the bond. It was real again. He didn't know what she'd done, didn't understand how, but he felt her. Every breath, every beat. She was out there, and she was burning. Back at the capital, chaos reigned. The elders had sealed the courtyard, called it blasphemy, claimed dark magic, declared Darius officially dead again. This time, not as a king, as a warning. They placed a bounty on Rhea's head by nightfall. 100,000 marks, dead or captured. Selena was the one who wrote the decree. She didn't blink as she signed it. "Kill the myth before it grows teeth," she whispered. But in her gut, something twisted. Because deep down, she'd felt the power in that courtyard too. And she'd seen the look in Rhea's eyes. That wasn't an Omega. That was the beginning of something they weren't prepared to bury. Not with politics, not with steel. Rhea didn't sleep that night. She sat in a hollow beneath the roots of an ash tree, her cloak wrapped tight, watching frost creep along the edges of the river. The baby shifted softly, like they were listening to the world with her. She kept hearing the sound, not a cry, not a voice, a pull. Not just Darius. Something else. Older. Calling to the part of her that remembered blood and birth and bones long before she was branded Omega. It whispered through the trees like memory. "You are not what they named you." She didn't know what that meant, but she would. Soon. And somewhere, past the river and the edge of the snow line, a shape moved through the dark. Hooded, slow, scentless, carrying something small that breathed. She woke before the sun, not to a sound, not to pain, to a memory, a voice, familiar, low, cruel. "You'll never be more than an Omega. You don't get to want things." Rhea's eyes opened, fast, sharp. Her heart was racing. The frost hadn't melted from the grass yet. Branches above her creaked in the cold. The world hadn't moved since the night before. But inside her chest, something had shifted. She wasn't the same girl who begged to be loved. Not anymore. She sat up slowly, cloak stiff with ice at the edges. Her hands rested on her stomach. The baby moved. Just once. Not a kick. A nudge. A knowing. They were aware now. Not just alive. Present. Connected. And she didn't know how to explain it, but she felt it. This child carried something more. Not a weapon. Not a curse. A spark. Whatever had saved Darius, it hadn't only come from her. It came from them. She stood, wobbled, gripped the tree trunk to keep steady. Her legs still ached from the run. Her ribs were sore from holding in everything she hadn't screamed. She needed answers. But answers didn't live in the capital. They never had. They lived backward, buried under years of shame, lies, and power stamped into skin. And she only knew one place to find them. The temple ruins were a day's walk north. Longer if you were pregnant. Longer still if the entire kingdom wanted your head. Rhea walked anyway, step after step through snow that didn't melt, through trees that watched, through silence that curled around her like a question no one wanted to ask. By mid-morning, her knees buckled. She dropped beside an old stump, catching her breath. Blood. She could smell it. Not hers. Not the baby's. Darius. Her head snapped up. She wasn't imagining it. The bond had flared. Faint, but real. Like a silver thread yanked from the other end. He was alive. Not just technically. Fully. Close. But not here. She closed her eyes, breathed in slow, and whispered, "Where are you?" No answer, only wind, only frost. By dusk, she reached the stone steps, cracked, covered in moss, hidden in shadow. The temple had been abandoned for years. Wolves used to come here for visions before the council outlawed it. Too many prophecies that didn't align with their agendas. Too many secrets the elders didn't want written down. Rhea stepped inside. The air changed instantly. Warmer, denser, thick with memory. The place smelled like dust and bone and herbs long gone stale. She lit a torch from the wall and moved deeper. Every step echoed like it didn't belong to her. And maybe it didn't. Maybe she was walking a path someone else had laid generations ago. She reached the old altar. Fingers shaking, she pulled back her cloak and placed her palm on the stone. Nothing happened. At first. Then the mark on her wrist pulsed. Soft. Silver. Alive. The room shivered. The torch dimmed. And a whisper rose from the stone, not a voice. A memory. Her mother's scream. Her father's growl. A baby crying. Then a flash. A name she hadn't heard since she was too young to understand it. Lycia. Rhea gasped. She staggered back. Almost fell. That wasn't her name. Was it? No. But it was her bloodline. The old blood. The lost line. One the council buried generations ago. Moon-blessed. She wasn't just a rejected Omega. She was descended from the wolves who had once balanced the land. And that changed everything. Outside, the wind had changed. It whipped around the temple like a warning. A howl echoed through the trees. Too close. Not Darius. Not his wolves. Hunters. Already? Rhea backed into the shadows. Breath held. Heart hammering. She heard them. Boots on stone. Low voices. The word bounty tossed like spit. There were at least 3. She couldn't fight them. Not like this. Not yet. She pressed her hand to the stone again. It pulsed. Faint. Like it was listening. She closed her eyes. Not to pray, to remember. The night of the execution. The light. The moment the blade should have taken him. What had risen in her wasn't rage. It was remembrance. Her body remembered what the bloodline knew. It had protected him, and now she had to protect them both. The footsteps got closer. "Spread out," one voice said. "She's here somewhere." They were in the temple now, torches flickering against the stone. Rhea slipped behind the broken wall, hand gripping the edge of her cloak. If they found her, they wouldn't hesitate. She wasn't a person to them. She was a myth that needed to die before it became a movement. But the temple knew her now, and it remembered the blood she carried. Just as the first torchlight passed over her hiding place, the wall behind her shifted. A seam split open. Quiet, stone on stone. A passage. Old, secret, unseen. She didn't question it. She moved, slipped inside. The wall closed behind her just as the hunters passed by. One paused, sniffed the air. She was here. But she's gone now. They moved on. And behind the wall, in the dark, Rhea kept breathing. Slow, careful, heart pounding, but safe. For now, she didn't know where the passage led, didn't know who carved it or why it opened for her, but she'd learned something tonight. She was more than they allowed her to believe, and the story they were trying to erase was just beginning to write itself. Next, the shadows will move, but so will she. Because when the hunted remembers she has teeth, the hunt changes sides. He was already moving before he knew where he was going, feet bleeding, shoulder half-healed, vision blurred by pain and memories he didn't ask to keep. But his wolf was awake now, and the bond was burning. That meant one thing. She was alive, and not just alive, awakened. Darius ducked under a twisted branch, breath ragged. The trees whispered above him, leaves curling like claws. The moon had disappeared behind heavy clouds, but the scent trail was still fresh. Smoke, ash, magic. He'd been through 100 forests in his lifetime. But this one was different. Old trees, silent dirt, the kind of quiet that remembered war. Every shadow felt like a warning, but every step forward pulled him deeper, closer. He didn't remember how he survived the execution. Only that Rhea had looked at him, and something broke open inside the world. Light, heat, then darkness. And now every breath felt like it didn't belong to him anymore. It belonged to them. He found the cave just after midnight, hidden beneath roots that looked like ribs. Its entrance swallowed in mist, almost like the forest wanted to keep it secret. He paused at the mouth, listened. Nothing. But something waited in there. He could feel it. Not danger. Memory. He stepped inside. The air was cold, colder than outside, but not dead. It breathed, soft and steady, a living thing. The deeper he moved, the more his heart started to race, not from fear, from recognition. This wasn't just any den. It was his. Old, forgotten, abandoned. He'd built it as a boy, before the crown, before the politics, before the war. Before he became something that didn't feel like a wolf anymore. Back when he was still just Darius. Before they trained him to forget he ever had a soul. He dropped to one knee beside the stone fire pit. Fingers ran over marks in the dirt, faded claw lines from a younger self. This place had never known power. It had only known truth, and that's why it still stood. He sat for a moment, breathing, remembering, bleeding quietly into the ground. The moon had always asked too much from him. Sacrifice, loyalty, obedience, but never love, never peace, not until her. Rhea. The rejected Omega they told him was a mistake, the one they made him turn away from, the one they marked like property and threw to the fringe. They thought that would end her. They thought he would forget. They were wrong on both counts. He unwrapped the bandage from his shoulder. The wound was still raw. Silver never healed easy, but beneath the burn something new had formed. A mark. Not the old Alpha crest, not a royal seal, a symbol he didn't recognize. Circular, jagged edges, glowing faint beneath the skin. He touched it, and the bond flared again. Not pain, connection. She felt it too. Wherever she was, whoever she was becoming, she felt him. Suddenly the wind shifted outside. Not natural, not weather. Movement. Darius rose to his feet in one smooth motion, blade drawn from his belt. No sound, no scent. Then, a whisper. Not in the air, in his head. "She's not who you remember." He froze. The voice wasn't his, wasn't Ria's, wasn't anyone living. He turned. Nothing there, just the dark, and the cave walls breathing slow. "She's more." He didn't run, didn't yell, just walked out of the cave and into the clearing. The wind hit him like a wall, cold, scented with magic, and blood that wasn't his. And in the sky, the clouds cracked. Moonlight spilled down like it had been waiting for this moment all night. And there, on the far edge of the clearing, standing just beyond the tree line, a figure, small, still, backlit by silver light, cloaked, barefoot. She didn't speak. She didn't have to. He knew that posture, knew that shape, even with the air between them, even with the power now humming off her skin like a shield, even with her eyes glowing like the first time the moon kissed the earth. Ria. She had found him first, but she wasn't running, wasn't breaking, wasn't hiding. She was watching, like she was trying to decide if he was real, and Darius, king, warrior, survivor, didn't know what to do next. So he dropped the blade, let it fall into the grass, took one step forward, then another, until she finally whispered his name, Darius. And the forest around them exhaled. She didn't cry, didn't reach for him. She just looked at him with that same expression she wore the day he rejected her. Not hate, not fear, restraint, because if she let herself feel all of it right now, she might shatter. But her voice didn't shake when she spoke again. "Do you remember what they did to me?" He closed his eyes. Yes. Every second of it. And now he had to answer for it. But he didn't get the chance, because the moment he opened his mouth to speak, the trees behind her moved. Not wind, not animals, men. And the silence that followed wasn't fear. It was the forest choosing sides. The first arrow didn't fly, it sang. A sharp whistle through air that used to be still. It buried itself in the tree beside Ria's head. She didn't flinch, didn't blink, didn't move. Not because she wasn't afraid, but because she was. And fear, when you've lived in it long enough, becomes a language you stop reacting to. She turned her head. Darius was already in front of her, shielding, breathing like a wolf barely leashed. He wasn't king right now. He was instinct in skin. 3 shadows moved through the trees, men in black, not rogues, not patrol, hunters, and not just any council-bound enforcers, the kind that didn't ask questions, the kind that made things disappear. Her eyes locked on the nearest one. "I'm not going back," she said softly. They didn't answer, didn't need to. Their orders were the kind written in blood, passed by mouth, and executed without hesitation. The second arrow was faster. It missed. Not because it was meant to, because the forest moved. A root, thick, moss-covered, twisted up from the ground and knocked the shaft mid-air. It dropped between them, still vibrating. Darius didn't look surprised. only said one word under his breath. The land remembers. And Rhea, she felt it, not just in the dirt, in her bones, in the stretch of her skin, in the back of her throat where the howl lived but hadn't been released. The forest didn't protect her before. When they chased her from the pack, when they called her cursed, when they branded her less. But now the trees knew her blood, and they chose differently. The first hunter charged. Darius moved to intercept, but Rhea stepped forward, her hand lifted. No power surged from her fingers, no bright light, no explosion, just a sound, a low hum, like a song you'd forgotten but never stopped hearing. And the man froze mid-stride, legs trembling, eyes wide, like something inside him recognized her. Then he dropped to his knees, didn't scream, didn't fight. He just wept. The others hesitated. Fear twisted their scent. That moment, that 1 second of confusion, was all Darius needed. He shifted. Bones cracked. Skin tore. The alpha took over. Not royal. Ruthless. And the clearing turned red. When it was over, it was quiet. The kind of quiet that feels full of breath, of choice, of change. Rhea stood at the edge of it all, still, silent, hands trembling, not from fear of what she'd done, from what she felt coming. Darius returned to human skin, blood streaked across his chest. He didn't speak, just walked to her, eyes scanning her face like trying to read a page he hadn't seen in years. "You didn't scream," he said. She looked at him, straight through him. "I stopped screaming the day you turned your back." The words cut, not because they were cruel, because they were true. He didn't argue, didn't explain, just nodded. The space between them ached, not just with history, with everything they still hadn't said. She turned away first, moved toward the fallen tree. Her hand brushed the bark. It shivered beneath her palm. The forest still knew her. It had watched her grow in silence, watched her carry shame like a second spine, watched her cradle a child no one wanted, and it whispered now, not in words, in feeling, a pull, south, to the old borderlands, where magic had once lived before it was drained by war, before the council had buried it under treaties and laws. She whispered, mostly to herself, "That's where they'll try again." Darius stepped beside her. "You're sure?" She didn't look at him. "I don't guess anymore. I know." He nodded, then, carefully, "What happened to you, Rhea?" Her jaw tightened. "Everything you didn't see." The moment stretched, held between them. He could smell her sorrow, not fresh, fused into her, like the scent of fire after the house is gone. He wanted to reach for her, but he didn't know if he still had the right. So he asked the only question that mattered. "Will you let me fight beside you?" Rhea turned to face him, eyes sharp, tired, ancient. "I don't need you to fight for me." Then, softer, quieter. "But I won't stop you from standing next to me." And that was the closest thing to forgiveness he'd ever get, for now. The moon had climbed high again, light spilling silver across broken earth, casting long shadows behind them. Rhea looked down at her stomach. The baby shifted. Darius noticed. "How far along?" She didn't answer with numbers. She answered with truth. "They've been waiting their whole lives to be born." He nodded. He understood that feeling. In the distance, a wolf howled. Not random. A message. The council wasn't giving up. They were gathering. This wasn't exile anymore. It was a hunt. And this time, she wasn't the prey, because the forest was waking. And this time, it would remember what was stolen and who came to take it back. The first contraction hit just before dawn. Rhea doubled over. One hand braced against the bark of a twisted old pine. Her breath shot out like mist. Sharp, wet, full of warning. Not yet. She wasn't supposed to feel this yet. But her body didn't care what was supposed to happen. It knew. Something was changing. And not just inside her. Behind her, Darius froze mid-step. He was still a few paces back, scanning the trail, eyes alert. But the moment her scent shifted, he turned. Fast. "Rhea?" She didn't answer at first. She was listening. Not with her ears, with her blood. Because something inside her wasn't moving like a normal pup anymore. It was turning, twisting, shifting. Not into pain, into power. "I need to lie down," she said, breathless. Darius was already there, his arm wrapped around her waist, warm, steady, bracing. He lowered her carefully into the hollow between two trees, where moss grew thick and soft beneath the roots. She curled into the space like she'd been there before in another life. And maybe she had, because this place didn't feel random. It felt chosen. She shut her eyes, not to escape, to reach deeper, to find whatever part of her bloodline they buried, the part they were so afraid of they labeled it cursed. But it wasn't a curse. It was a key. One passed down through the oldest line of Lunas, not queens, balancers, the ones who carried the bridge between magic and instinct. And as her heartbeat slowed, she remembered something the old midwife once whispered before she was exiled. "The child you carry won't come into this world like other wolves. She'll walk in from the space between stars." Back then, Rhea thought it was nonsense. Now, she wasn't so sure. Darius knelt nearby, tension in every muscle. His eyes never left her. He was trying to give her space, but he was wired to protect. Every gust of wind made him twitch, every rustle of leaves, every beat of silence. But what he couldn't protect her from was this: the change, the becoming. Because this wasn't just labor, this was a crossing. Rhea's spine arched, her breath caught, not from pain, from recognition. A presence was here, not near, inside. The child wasn't asleep anymore. She was awake, and she wasn't alone. Rhea blinked. The forest around her faded. The moss beneath her fingers blurred, and then she wasn't in the woods anymore. She was somewhere else. Dark, still. The kind of dark that doesn't feel like fear. It feels like truth. She stood barefoot on a surface that wasn't earth. It glowed faint silver. Mist floated like breath. And in front of her, a figure. Small, glowing, female. Eyes like hers. Hair like moonlight. No older than 6. The child looked up. "You're not ready yet," she said. Her voice was soft, but it rang in Rhea's bones like prophecy. "I don't understand," Rhea whispered. The child smiled gently. "I'm not just your daughter." Pause. "I'm your memory." Rhea's mouth parted, but no sound came out. The girl stepped closer. "You were never meant to carry me alone," she said. "You were meant to return me." "Return?" The child nodded toward the dark around them. And suddenly Rhea felt it. Dozens of heartbeats, small, warm, ancient. She was standing between worlds, where lost shifter children had been kept, where magic had been siphoned, where the council had sealed what they couldn't understand. And her baby was born from that breach. Not corrupted, chosen, back in the real world. Darius was panicking. Rhea's pulse was shallow. Her skin had gone cold. She wasn't responding. He held her hand in both of his, pressed it to his chest. "Stay," he whispered. "Stay with me." He didn't beg. He promised. Inside the in-between, the child stepped forward again. "You'll forget this place when you wake up," she said, "but you'll remember me when you hear me cry." Ria's voice cracked. "I don't want to leave you." "You're not," the girl said softly. "You're bringing me through." A pause. "And the moment I open my eyes, everything will change." The world began to blur again. The mist dissolved. The floor cracked with light, and Ria's final words were, "I'm ready." She gasped. Air shot into her lungs like wildfire. Her eyes snapped open. Darius jolted back. And from her body, from her soul, came a howl that split the trees apart. It wasn't a scream of pain. It was a call. Old, powerful, lunar. And as the forest echoed with her sound, the first pulse of labor truly began. And miles away, in the capital, the council felt it. A tremor in the bond magic. A fracture in the veil they thought they sealed, and the high seer, blind and bound in silks, whispered 2 words into the fire. "She's awakening." Because Ria wasn't just giving birth. She was about to reopen a door that had been shut for 1,000 years. And the child they called impossible? She was already on her way. It began with a crack. Not in the earth, not in her body, in the veil, the line between this world and the next. Ria felt it the moment her second contraction hit. Deeper. Hotter. Like something inside her wasn't just pushing to be born. It was breaking through. Darius was beside her again, kneeling, sweat down his temples, fear in his throat. But this time, she didn't look at him. Her eyes were fixed ahead, because the forest had gone still, too still, like it was holding its breath, like something ancient was listening. And then, a shape moved in the mist, not a wolf, not a hunter, not even a shadow. Something else, tall, cloaked, face hidden. But the scent, it wasn't alive. And yet, it knew her name. Ria didn't speak, didn't growl, didn't ask who it was. She already knew. The same presence she felt inside the in-between. That strange space her baby had pulled her into. The figure stepped closer, and the air bent around it, like the world was trying to keep it out, and failing. "You open the door," it said, a voice like wet stone dragging. Ria clenched her jaw. "I didn't mean to." "No," it rasped, but she did. Her hand dropped to her belly. Another contraction, harder, almost violent. The baby kicked, and the air shivered. The figure turned its head slowly toward Darius. "She was never meant to survive," it said. Darius stepped between them, chest bare, eyes burning. "You want her?" His voice was low. "You'll go through me." The figure didn't laugh, didn't taunt. It just whispered, "You're too late." A flash, silver, cold, blinding, and when Ria blinked, the figure was gone. But not the feeling. It had left a mark on the land. The moss beneath her was dead, blackened, like the very life had been sucked out. She looked up at Darius, her voice cracked. "She's coming." "Who?" "The child." A beat. "And something else." Darius didn't argue, didn't demand answers. He moved into action, fast, precise. He built a barrier of roots and fallen branches around them, low and circular. Old werewolf birthright, a nest, a shield. He murmured low protection spells, not strong enough to hold back a full force, but enough to buy time, and time was all they had, because Ria's body was ready, but the world wasn't. The contractions came closer now. No warning, no mercy. But pain wasn't what she feared. It was what came with it. Every time the baby pushed, the veil cracked a little more, and behind it, she could hear them. Not voices, not screams, memories. Hundreds of other Omegas, rejected, used, discarded, erased, their grief folded into hers, and from that grief, power, not rage, something older, correction. Then the sky tore, right down the center, like the clouds were paper. A single lightning bolt, red, not white, slammed into the tree beside them, split it in half. Darius threw himself over her body. She screamed, not from pain, but from realization. The baby was ready. Her legs trembled. Her breath stuttered. Her hands dug into the soil. She wasn't screaming like a warrior. She was summoning, and the forest, the ground, the air, answered. All at once, her wolf surged forward, not to shift, to open, because the birth wasn't physical. It was dimensional. Darius watched in horror and awe as her skin lit from within, silver veins glowing, eyes rolled back, and from her body, from her soul, from the door that shouldn't open, a light emerged, soft, piercing, alive. The child, born not of body, but of bond. A girl, wrapped in moonlight, silent, breathing, watching. Rhea collapsed, not unconscious, transcended. Her eyes fluttered open. The child lay beside her, and for the first time since her exile, she smiled. But then, the ground shivered again. Darius stepped forward and froze, because standing in the clearing, where the lightning had struck, was his brother. Not dead, not imprisoned, smiling, the last high executioner of the council, holding a dagger carved from shadow. And behind him, Celine, alive, unburned, unbroken. "You opened the door," she whispered. "Now we walk through it, because the child wasn't the end of the prophecy. She was only the beginning." Darius moved without thinking. One step in front of Rhea, blade drawn, shoulder squared. But inside, his heartbeat wasn't steady. It was screaming. Because the man standing at the edge of the clearing, that wasn't just a council soldier. It was Kalen, his brother, his blood, the one who disappeared 5 winters ago, after swearing loyalty to the execution court, and now he stood there smiling, like nothing had happened, like the earth hadn't just cracked open to deliver a miracle child, like they weren't seconds away from war. "Hello, brother." Kalen's voice was smooth, dry, slick with something unspoken. Rhea stirred behind him, clutching the newborn girl. She didn't cry. She just watched. Like she knew this moment had been waiting for them all along. Darius didn't flinch. "You should be dead." Kalen laughed once. "Yeah, I get that a lot." The moon dipped low. Clouds shifted. The clearing tightened like a noose. Kalen took a step forward. Darius mirrored it. One wrong move, and blood would spill. But that wasn't what made the air crackle. It was Celine, still standing just behind Kalen, her pale cloak rippling like fog, her eyes fixed not on Rhea, but on the child. "She's breathing," Celine said. Not a question, not even surprise, a statement. Darius narrowed his gaze. "What do you want?" She tilted her head, calm, deadly. "I want what's mine." Rhea stood now, slow, steady. The baby in her arms didn't wail, didn't squirm. She just stared at Celine, eyes glowing faint gold, the same glow that cracked open the veil. Celine saw it too, and for the first time, her face shifted. Not anger, not fear, reverence. Kalen moved again, circling, keeping Darius in his periphery. "You really don't get it, do you?" he said, voice lower now. "This was never about exile, or revenge, or even the throne." He pointed at Rhea, at her, then at the child. At that. The air thickened. Darius felt it coil around his chest. He shifted slightly, enough to shield both of them. "She's a baby," he growled. "She's a breach," Celine snapped. "A living doorway." That word again. Doorway. He didn't know what it meant. Not fully. But Rhea, she did. Because her breath caught in her throat. She looked down at the girl. Tiny, perfect, silent. And something inside her clicked. The memory of the in-between, the pale child with her voice, the way the baby's presence had pulled back souls, not just air. This wasn't power. It was balance. "She's not a weapon," Rhea said. Her voice was quiet, but it split the clearing like lightning. "She's a choice. A second chance." Celine's lips curled. "That's the same lie your bloodline is always told." Darius stepped forward. "I don't care what prophecy you think this is. You're not touching her." Silence. Then Kalen grinned. "I was hoping you'd say that." He drew his blade. Not steel. Bone. Old. Cracked. Stained with sigils. The kind only forged for one reason. Blood oaths. The kind that bound fates and ripped them apart. Darius met him halfway. They clashed in the center of the clearing. Blade to blade. Brother to brother. Each strike rang louder than the last. Not just metal. Memory. Of childhood hunts. Of late-night whispers. Of a promise to protect the realm. Together. Until Kalen chose the council. "You stood by while they executed our father," Darius spat. Kalen's blade caught his arm. A shallow slice. He didn't blink. "You think he was innocent?" Kalen hissed. "He lied to all of us. Then why are you here now?" "Because he was wrong about her," Kalen shouted, pointing again at Rhea. "And so was I." They stopped. Just for a breath. The baby stirred again, and something pulsed beneath their feet. A hum. Not magical. Primal. The child was waking up. Fully. Her wolf was surfacing, and the world was reacting. Celine moved first. A shimmer of silver around her hands. Magic. Ancient and illegal. She raised it high, ready to sever the bond between Rhea and the child. Rhea stepped forward. No spell, no scream, just certainty. And with one breath, she whispered the words she'd heard in the in-between, words she didn't even know she remembered. The ground split, not deep, just wide enough, and Celine's magic faltered, flickered, then vanished. The spell collapsed like smoke. "No," Celine whispered. Her voice cracked. "She's not supposed to remember those words." Rhea looked her in the eye, calm, unmoving. "She was never yours to claim." Behind her, the baby blinked, and every wolf in the valley felt it. A new bond forming, one untouched by bloodlines, untethered to the old laws. A bond born of choice. Kalen dropped his sword. His breath shook. "She chose," he whispered. And for the first time, he looked afraid. But Celine wasn't done. She backed away, not retreating, regrouping. "Then we go to the Hollow Court," she spat. "And let the old blood decide." Darius stepped beside Rhea, his voice like steel. "Then we'll bring the child." Celine turned, cloak snapping in the wind. "So be it." She vanished into the mist. Silence fell. Then, The baby cooed, soft, warm, like nothing had happened. But everyone knew everything had changed, because to face the hollow court, they'd have to do the one thing Rhea swore never to do again: return to the kingdom that executed her mate. The gates loomed taller than she remembered, black iron, twisted with old silver vines, moon sigils embedded like scars, the same gates they'd dragged Ronan through, chained, broken, bleeding. Rhea stared at them now, her arms wrapped tight around her daughter, her pulse fighting to stay steady. The city beyond hadn't changed. The faces, the eyes, the smell of wet stone and secrets. But she had, and the wolf in her chest was wide awake. The guards didn't move. They knew who she was, even without her name. The white cloak, the mark on her palm, the child asleep against her heart. They parted. No questions. No declarations, just silence. The kind that means the old stories have come back to life. Darius walked behind her, his jaw locked. His hand never left his sword, and to the right, Kalen, his brother, his former enemy, walked like a ghost. They passed through the gates, and it hit her. The cold, not the weather, the memory. Stone halls, faded banners, paintings of alphas who ruled by decree, not by heart. They led her down a corridor she hadn't seen in years, not since Ronan stood trial before the council for crimes he never committed. And now, she was back, without him, but with the child they tried to erase. The hollow court waits, one elder murmured. Rhea didn't respond. She adjusted the child on her chest. The baby didn't stir, just breathed, soft and warm, like she could sense what was coming. The courtroom smelled like power and dust. Tall ceilings, marble floors, 12 elders in a circle. Celine at the center, no throne, just a sunken circle, where wolves were judged, broken, or crowned. She'd watched Ronan fall here. Now they were all watching her. Celine didn't rise. She smiled. And gods, that smile, like polished bone. Beautiful, soulless. Rhea stepped into the center, and the chamber sealed. 12 against 1, and a baby. "You carry what should not exist," said Elder Brix. His voice was brittle as old paper. "She exists," Rhea replied, steady, soft, unshakable. "And she's listening." They didn't like that. You could feel it, the ripple of unease. Old wolves didn't fear strength. They feared the kind they couldn't predict. And this child, born of exile and love, was impossible. Elder Niel leaned forward. "What is her name?" Rhea looked down. The girl blinked. Gold shimmered in her irises. Not magic. Truth. "I called her Leora," Rhea said, "because she was born from light." A murmur passed through the circle. Light was not a word this room welcomed. Celine stood now. Her white gown brushed the floor like water. "You come into this court unbonded. Your mate is dead. Your child unacknowledged. And yet you walk like royalty." Rhea didn't blink. "I walk like a mother." It shook them. Not the words, the certainty. Celine circled her slowly, like a snake around prey. "You think this child will be your protection?" Rhea turned toward her. "No," she said. "She's not my shield. She's my reckoning." And then Leora moved. Not a cry, not a kick. She raised one tiny hand and pointed it at the court. And the stone beneath their feet glowed. Sigils, once dead, lit up. Not red, not gold, moon white. The ancient kind, older than the packs, older than the council, the language of Luna herself. Elder Brix gasped. "Impossible." Rhea didn't move. "She's not rewriting prophecy," she said. "She is prophecy." Celine's eyes narrowed. "You don't know what you've brought here." A door slammed open. Everyone turned. A messenger, young, breathless, afraid. He dropped to one knee. "There's been an awakening in the north. The ice wolves have risen." Gasps. The last ice wolves went extinct decades ago, or so they thought. The elder turned to Rhea. "What did you awaken?" Rhea looked down at Leora. Her voice was quiet, broken, but not weak. "Hope." Behind her, Darius gripped his blade. Kaylin's eyes flicked toward the ceiling. And above them, the carved moon in the stone, cracked, hairline, tiny. But enough. Enough to whisper that nothing would ever be the same again. Because the hollow throne remembered what everyone else forgot, that the true heir was never meant to wear a crown. She was meant to break it. The snow fell like ash, heavy, silent, like the forest itself was holding its breath. Rhea stood at the edge of the stone altar, barefoot, shoulders back, child in arms. Behind her, the mountains split the sky in two. Before her, the hollow court stood in judgment, again. This time, they didn't speak. Not yet, because this time, they weren't sure who stood before them. An Omega? A traitor? A mother? Or something else entirely? Leora stirred. A breath. A blink. And the clouds moved. Like the moon was watching through slitted eyes, and Darius stood to the right, silent, scarred, unmoving. Kaylin stood on the left, blade down, eyes wide. And behind them, wolves. Hundreds. Not from one pack, not from one law. From all of them. The forgotten. The exiled. The ones who watched their kings burn and wondered what came next. Celine stepped forward. Her crown glinted like frost. Sharp. Cold. "I should have ended this the day he died," she said. Her voice didn't waver, but her hands weren't still. Rhea stepped down the altar, slow, deliberate. Each step cracked the ice underfoot, but she didn't flinch. "You did end it," she said softly. "You ended the lie." Leora opened her eyes. The glow returned. Not fire, not magic. A pulse. The same vibration that shifted trees, called wolves to their knees. A heartbeat older than thrones. "You can't control what's coming," Celine warned. Her voice turned bitter, desperate. Rhea stopped. "I'm not trying to control it. I'm letting it choose." That was the true threat. Not power, freedom. Because if wolves chose bond over blood, truth over fear, everything the court built would fall. The first elder rose, then another, then the third. Each one stared at Leora, and one by one, they knelt. The crack in the moonstone sigil widened above them. Not breaking, opening. Light spilled through. A silver beam struck the center of the altar, cold, alive. Rhea stepped into it. Leora raised her tiny hand into the light, and the sky responded. Wind curled. The wolves behind them howled. Not in rage, in recognition. Celine's crown slipped, her breath caught. "You think this is over?" she hissed. "No," Rhea said quietly. "It's only just beginning." Celine moved fast, blade drawn, straight for Leora, faster than any elder expected. But Rhea was faster, not with speed, with certainty. She turned, shifted. The wolf exploded from her skin in pure light. No scream, no bones cracking, just presence. A white wolf, tall, scarred, glowing faint at the paws. Her body met Celine mid-air, flesh to steel, magic to fury. The crown shattered. Celine hit the ground hard, blade flying into the snow. Rhea landed on all fours, blood in her mouth, not hers. She stepped forward. Celine crawled back, eyes wide, face pale, not from pain, from truth. "I was wrong," she whispered. "She was never the weapon." Rhea shifted back, slowly, gracefully. She bent down and picked up Leora. Of course she wasn't. She was the key. The light above cracked again. Final. Complete. A single shard of moonstone fell and embedded itself in the snow at Leora's feet. It pulsed once, then dissolved into mist. The throne behind the court, once etched with names of kings, began to fade. Not collapse, fade, until there was nothing left but open sky and untouched earth. No more rulers, only guardians. The elders bowed. No speeches, no laws, only silence. The kind that follows a storm. Days passed, then weeks. The forest healed first, then the rivers, then the packs. Some refused the new way. They faded. Others embraced it. They thrived. Darius built nothing with walls, only gathering stones, fire pits, circle grounds. No alpha titles, just names. Kalen left the valley, but not in shame. He left to tell the others, to find the scattered. And Rhea? She stayed, with Leora, with her silence, with her strength. Some called her Luna, some called her Ghost. She answered to neither, only to Leora's tiny voice. When the girl finally spoke, "Mama," she whispered one dawn. Rhea froze. Tears hit the earth before she could stop them. "Mama," Leora said again. Her first word, her truest name. And with it, the last chain broke, because it was never about blood. It was never about crowns. It was about the right to choose love after being told you don't deserve it. The snow melted early that year. Wolves howled in peace, and the forest, for the first time in generations, stayed quiet. Because no one ruled it now. Not a king, not a traitor, not a council. Only the girl who was born of light, and the mother who chose her when the world told her to walk away.